Hello everybody, today I'm going to show you how to detune any song of your choosing. Now, this process is very long and very complicated, so I'm going to try my absolute best to make this video as short as possible and as concise as possible in order to keep everybody happy and entertained throughout the video, and also so you can learn how I do my stuff. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do before you have any of the detuning stuff happen is you need to have a digital audio workstation. Now, I'm using FL Studio right now. This is just my preferred software, and this is the only way I'm going to be showing you guys how to use it. Now, FL Studio is free. They have a free trial version where you can use every feature that I have access to, but you cannot save your projects. That is the only limiting factor. You cannot save your projects, so you have to get it all done in one sitting. And you can't save your projects and look back at how you did stuff. That is going to be your only limiting factor. But for all intents and purposes, it should work out for this video. If you download the free trial version, I'll have it linked in the description. Download it, set it up, and then open up your project, and then you should see a window that kind of looks like this. I'm not going to really be teaching you guys how to use every individual part of FL Studio. I'm more so just going to really hone in on Edison and how that tool works and how you can use it to change the timbre and the pitch of your audio how you want it to be. So step number one is I need to grab an audio file. Okay, so I have my music here. Now, the example I'm going to be using is One by Metallica. This is going to be a great example because it has different parts of the song. It has a clean part, it has a distorted part, it has a solo, it has high cleans. I'll show you guys how to kind of go about the different parts of the songs. First step though is you need to actually have an audio file of the song. Now, you're probably looking at this and you're a little bit confused. So let me show you what's going on here. So at the top, I have the actual just one Metallica track. It's the whole song just all completed, like just as a FLAC file, just downloaded to my computer. Now, all of these 4 tracks, these are stems of the song. So it has the guitar and all of the extra kind of background noises. We've got vocals, we have bass, and we have the drums. So if I come down here and I just isolate the drums, you'll only be able to hear the drums of the song. And I'll show you how it works with the vocals too. So this is just the vocals isolated.
Back in the womb, it's much too real. In pumps laugh that.
So the way I get these stems is totally free. As long as you have an audio file of the song, MP3, FLAC, WAV, doesn't matter. There's a website you can go to. I have it linked in the description. It is called Vocal Remover. Now, this is the website right here. Now, I have the paid version. You can get the paid version for only $1 a month. Super, super cheap. You just have to donate to this guy's Patreon. I'll also have that link down there so you guys can do that. But the free version is going to be this one right over here. They look very similar to each other. The only difference is the 2.0 paid version gets a little bit powerful algorithm and you get unlimited usage out of it. Because this one you can only use, I think, 4 or 5 times a day. Now, if you're trying to do these in bulk, I would recommend getting the paid version. It's the value to price ratio is just unmatched. Definitely worth it. So when you're on the website, I'm going to just use the premium version for this video. You're going to come over here to this little box in the top left corner and you're going to see a few different versions. Now, if you're on the free version, you should be able to follow along with this too. There's going to be just a regular vocal remover. I don't know if they have karaoke mode on the non-paid version, but there's a music splitter, and this is going to be the one you want. That is the one you want. Now, there's one that says it has a guitar in it, and it might be tempting to try that one. But in all of my cases, the one where it just has music works as good, if not better, than the guitar splitter. So that is what I would recommend for everybody here. So once you're here, you're going to just choose your file, and you can see this is how it's going to split it up. This is exactly how I have it on my one song. It has bass, drums, music, and vocals. So you're going to come down, and you're going to choose your file. So I'm going to choose a file. I'm just going to choose one real quick, just as an example. Okay, and then you're going to open it, and it's going to load. Now, it doesn't honestly take that long. It takes maybe a minute or two. I think it depends on your Wi-Fi connection, so I wouldn't use my progress as an example. Once you try it yourself, you know how long it takes per song, and it also depends on how long the song is as well. So it's going to process the audio. Sip my coffee. Okay, here we are. Now, this is your final page of where you're going to see all your stuff. You've got the bass, you've got drums, music, and vocals. Now, music is going to cover guitar. It's going to cover random instrumental noises in the background. So, like if we listen here. Well, this part's already isolated. Let me go to a part where there's music. Listen to that. It does a really fantastic job of isolating. Now, some of it might sound weird to you, especially the bass. I always find that the bass sounds like it has this artificial like choppiness to it. It just sounds kind of weird, but once you place it within the mix, and that's all you're going to be hearing, that's all that matters, and it sounds great. So if I turn up everything, it's just going to sound like the original song, and this is how it's going to sound during the whole thing. And the best part about having an isolated bass, especially on the And Justice for All tracks, is you can turn it up in the mix so that people can actually hear it. And that's, I see a lot of comments on my one video about turning up the bass and stuff, so that's how you're going to want to do that. So once you're here, now the way they have the downloading thing is really complicated. I don't know if this is how it works on the unpaid version. I remember it working as you would hit save and then it would give you an option for which track you want to download, and then you would download it. But for the new paid version, what you have to do is if you want to download each track individually, you have to turn the other tracks all the way to 0 and then choose your format. I'm going to choose FLAC since I uploaded it as a FLAC, and then just hit save and it will save just that one track. So you'll see I have the bass up here, and then I'll do the drums, the music, and the vocals, and so on and so forth. So once you have those files, let's go back to FL Studio. I have them placed in here, and I have it organized top to bottom. I go music, vocals, bass, and drums. Just kind of most important to least important tracks, in my opinion, at least as far as mixing goes, not as far as the actual song goes. Let me show you an example of mixing audio with timbre. I'm gonna call it timbre preservation and just regular pitching. This is kind of the example I want to show you guys how it can make the music sound good and bad. And there's a way that you need to learn how to use it in order for it to sound good. So this is just regular pitching. It's just using resampling. It's slowing down the whole damn thing, and it's making it sound really weird and muddy. Now you'll be able to hear this here. This is just the guitar track, by the way. So it slows down the whole track, it pitches it down so it sounds muddy, but it preserves every single piece of audio is preserved. Now that's the bonus side of being able to use non-timbre preservation audio, is that all of the audio is saved, so you're not losing any data, so to speak. So if I switch this mode over here, by the way, I get to this. If you just double click on your track, this is how you open up this menu right here. And this is a really important menu. I use this for the vocals. So if I come to, in fact, let me test this out on the vocals real quick, because you'll hear a more stark difference between the vocals, I believe. So if we come down here and I isolate the vocals, this is what they sound like normally.
I can't remember anything.
Okay, so sounds pretty good. Don't worry about if it cuts out, it will sound fine in the mix. Don't worry about that. So if I just pitch it down normally, resampling, this is what it sounds like.
I can't remember anything. Can't tell if this is true.
So you can hear that it sounds weird. It sounds like he's talking through, like, it just sounds funky. It doesn't sound like James. It doesn't sound right. It's because it's not preserving the timbre, but it's preserving the audio, so you don't lose any data. This is your pitch knob, by the way. Oh, I forgot to teach you guys this. I need to slow down for a sec. So this is your pitch knob, and it works. This number right here is how many half steps you want to pitch down. So if I want to pitch it down from E to what's 4 half steps down below E, I believe it's B. If I want to tune the song down to B, I can do that. If I want to tune it up to whatever 4 half steps above E is, you can do that. And also has a cent adjustment, so I can adjust it to be between half of that. So if you want to like remix Ride the Lightning to be 440 instead of 444 or whatever it is, you can do that on here too. Allow me to show you guys what it sounds like when you use timbre preservation on your audio. So if I come to the mode right here, there's a bunch of different ones. There's Stretch Pro, E3 Generic, E3 Mono, all this, blah, 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 blah. Most of this doesn't matter. The only ones you're going to want to focus on is Stretch Pro. Now you can see formant, that's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it formant pitching. Sorry, excuse everything I've said for timbre preservation. It's formant pitching. That's how I'm going to refer to it for the rest of the video. So formant pitching, this is the most important thing that you're going to have in your audio mix when you're detuning stuff. Now formants is basically, that's what I'm going to call it, the timbre of the audio. So listen to this. If I have it set, so I'm going to pitch it down 2 whole steps. As you can see, the audio isn't getting longer like it was with resample. It's staying the same length, which is what we want. Now, I'm going to move my formant shift knob down -200 cents. Now, this is just going to preserve, it's similar to the resample where it's going to save all the data of the audio. No data gets lost, but it sounds funky.
I can't remember anything. Can't tell if this is true.
So you see it sounds similar to that resample version of it where it sounds all funky. So now if I take this knob and I bring it up to preserve, which will be in the center, you can't really see it moving because it's so small, but it's moving. So you have it set to preserve. Now listen to the audio right now.
I can't remember anything. Can't tell if this is true.
Now you can hear that sounds a lot more real. I'll play it side by side after this so you guys can really hear.
I can't remember anything. Can't tell if this is true. I can't remember anything. Can't tell if this is true.
But that actually sounds more like James, and it sounds like he's actually singing it at that pitch, which would be D standard on this track since it's recorded in E standard. So you might be wondering, how the hell do you get this to apply across the whole song? Well, let me show you. It's really simple once you learn it the first time. And this is once you learn it the first time, you can recreate it on any song ever. Any piece of audio you want to detune, you want to pitch down and preserve the timbre, you can do it. It doesn't have to be metal. It doesn't have to be Metallica. It can be anything you want. After you've got your vocals, I'm going to just detune the whole song to D standard. So I'm going to show you guys how this works. For the vocals and the bass, you can just, all you have to do to detune them, you don't have to worry about doing the whole Edison thing. You can just set the resample mode to stretch pro and then come to the pitch knob and shift it down 200 cents, or just shift it down all the way and have this range set to 2. So now our bass and our vocals will be matching. Now the drums I don't touch the drums. Now the reason for this is that if you touch the drums, they might start phasing in and out of the mix. And also I just think it makes it sound more natural if you keep the drums pitched where they were. Now, some people might disagree. Test it on whatever song you're doing. This is just my personal opinion. You can do whatever you want. So if you listen, I'm listening to all this except for the guitar. So everything in the mix is on except the guitar.
I can't remember anything. Can't tell if this is true or a dream.
Now, I think honestly that sounds pretty damn good. At least so far. Now, without it, it sounds a little funky, like the vocals, they don't sound like they're fitting in the mix right. Once you bring the guitar in, it will sound totally fine. Now, you guys are probably the most curious about the guitar. How do I make the guitar sound good throughout the whole song? Now, here's where the technical shit gets into play. So, if we come to, let's see, this part of the song, listen to how high the pitch is. Now, you'll hear that's a pretty low pitch. If you play guitar, you'll know that they're playing pretty low on the strings. They're playing on the A and D string, but it's a pretty low pitch. So that's a pretty low pitch. But now if we come over to the part where it does the high pitch of the clean version, let me find it. Let's see, where is it at? This. Now, do you hear how high pitched that solo is in comparison to the rest of the track? Now, this is where you want to be cautious of where you're mixing. So, in order to get this to sound right for the whole track and make it sound good across the whole track, let me give you an example. If I let's go to the solo of the one. I need to find it real quick. Okay, there's a solo. So let me shift down using the stretch pro method, shifting down, just leaving the timbre preserved. Now you're going to hear that the solo is going to sound really funky. It's got this weird artifacting noise. Just listen. Now, I don't know if you can hear that as well as I can, maybe because I've done it so much, but I'll play it in comparison if I don't preserve the audio and I shift it down to 100 cents to just keep the data. Now, I hope you can hear that well, because this is very important and crucial to the mix. The thing that I have learned with the formant shifting audio is that the timbre preservation audio, whatever you want to call it, is that you have to section out different parts of the song where the pitch is higher and where the pitch is lower in order for the mix to sound complete and just make it sound realistic. So there's a way to do that. Thankfully. Now, it's not going to be done in this menu over here or anything like that. You need to have Edison. Now, what is Edison? It is a audio mess around tool. That's what I'm going to call it, because I'm not that technical about this stuff, but I know how to use it. So in your plugin track, you're going to have a bunch of different tracks down here. Setup probably doesn't look exactly like mine, but you're going to have a thing that kind of looks like this. Select any of these tracks. I usually pick number 8 just because. So on track, whatever you have, you're going to come over to this menu and you're going to choose slot 10. Or it doesn't matter what slot you pick. Pick any slot, and you need to find your Edison tool. Now, mine's down here under MISC. So find MISC on your thing, click on Edison, open it. It's a tool that should look either similar or exactly like this. Now, this tool is the godsend of timbre preservation detuning songs because of the way you can section out parts of the song. Now, let me show you. You might be saying, how do you get the audio into there? Well, it's really easy. You're going to double click on your guitar track only. Now, this is for mixing metal. I don't know what you're mixing. I'm just mixing metal. So you're going to take your guitar track, which has the most kind of dynamic pitch. So it has the solos or it has the really low chuggy parts. Like, you know how in one it has that really chuggy part after the, you know what I'm talking about, guys. You're going to take your track on here. You see this audio right here. You're going to just drag it out and you're going to drag it into Edison. Now, we have the whole guitar track inside of Edison right now. Now, for some reason, the audio starts playing automatically once you put it into there. All you have to do is just click on this little bar up top if it starts playing randomly. Don't worry about that. So now, you're going to want to full screen this window. Now, this is where the magic happens, guys. Allow me to show you how it works. So, we have our beginning stuff. and then we have the guitar coming in right here. Now for this part of the song, let's section off this part of the song before the beginning clean solo. So let's find where the clean solo comes in right here. Okay. Whoops. It comes in right at this bar of on this line right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right before where the audio clicks. You're going to have this little red thing, this cursor, and then you're going to press M. Now this is going to create a marker. Now you don't have to name it anything. In fact, I never do, and you can just hit the check mark, and then it will automatically label it marker 1, whatever. Now you can label this if you want it to match so you know what the audio looks like, but if you know the song well, you don't really need to do that. We have our beginning part, so the issue is you have to also section off the beginning part too, at the very beginning of the track. So you got to come all the way back here, make sure your cursor is all the way at the end or as far as it can get, press M and make another marker. So, and even if you place a marker before this marker, it will label it marker 1, which is really nice. Now, if I press FN on my keyboard and I press an arrow key, you can see this whole section is highlighted. And if I hold down FN and press my right arrow key again, it will come section off the rest of the song. Now, this is the important part. Now, this is where the markers really come into play. Now, before you detune anything, you have to mark off the entire song. Now, this can either be really simple or really complicated depending on what kind of music you're listening to. If you're listening to a Deftones song, they don't really have solos in their song, and that's what you want to focus on, the high pitches. If you hear a high pitch in the song, that's where you're going to want to section it off from the rest. Now, the more you do it, the better you'll learn how to really listen and which parts you want to section off depending on how precise you want the audio to be. Now, for me, I'm only going to really do it where there's solos. I don't really care about high up power chords or anything like that. Solos is basically where the only parts I'm going to section it off from the rest. So you hear this whole part, we have the solo. And you'll also notice that the lower pitch guitar is playing at the same time of the solo. And now this is going to make it have that. Now, if we want to preserve the solo, we have to sacrifice the low pitch audio. So how this is going to work is that we have to take our high pitched audio and we have to preserve that in order, but you're going to hear if you listen really, really closely, you're going to hear that the lower pitches sound a little bit muddy and have this weird kind of like muddy, kind of deal going on. But you're going to hear that the high pitched solo right here is going to sound perfect. It's going to sound like it was recorded that way. So let me go to the end of the solo and section it off, and I'll show you guys how to do this. Okay, I've sectioned off this portion of the solo right here. This part doesn't get as high pitched right here, so like if you listen, it doesn't get as high pitched as this over here. This is higher than this, and that's an important distinction you want to keep in your mind. Just make sure you know that when you're detuning these songs. So let me show you the magic. So if you press FN, press your right arrow key, or excuse me, press your left arrow key again, since it goes all the way to the right. So you press FN and you just use your left and right arrow keys to move around your markers. FN, go to this section right here. You're gonna press Alt and T, and this is the magic menu that I've been wanting to show you guys this whole video. Now, if you don't have an Alt key or whatever, if you want to access it normally, you can come down to the settings bar and you come down to time stretch / pitch shift under time. Now, this is the most important menu of the whole thing. Now, you'll see there's a bunch of different knobs and, things here. Don't get confused, okay? It's pretty simple. So your method, you might be thinking, oh, you want to do Stretch Pro. No, you don't actually. This one you want to have E3 generic. Now that is the highest, as far as I know, it's the highest quality method of pitch preservation if you have a formant preservation knob over here like you do. You want to pitch it down to D standard, right? So that's 2 half steps down or 1 whole step. If you look in the top left, it says pitch shift course, and then in parentheses it says semitones. So we're moving down a half step for every time we shift this knob. Now, if you look in that top left menu, you can see if I move it to the left, it will say -1 semitone, and then -2 semitones. That is where we want it in D standard. So we're going to shift it -2 semitones. And you can use this fine knob to shift the sense up and down. So like I'm saying, if you're detuning Ride the Lightning, you want to make it 440, you would just shift that down like 4 or whatever, however you calculate that. Anyways, rest of these knobs, don't touch them. You only want to touch the pitch course knob. And you want to have this insert button, make sure that's on. So the most important part and the most complicated part is this formant preservation tab down here. Now, how does this work? So basically what you're doing, you want to also move this factor course knob down -2 semitones. You want it to match your pitch course. Or all you have to do is hit copy from pitch and it will copy how many semitones it moves down from the pitch. Now, this order knob is where it gets really complicated. So if I shift it to the right and I preview the audio, just listen real quick. Now, if you listen closely, you can hear the weird artifacting going on. I'm sure you'll hear it more in the next part of the solo. But if I move it all the way to the left, listen now. Now you hear that all of the audio, all of the data is saved if I move the order knob all the way to the left. Now, the best part about this knob is that you can move it anywhere in between you want. So all we have to do is keep previewing this section of the song until we can hear that the high pitches sound normal, and that's basically it. That's all we have to do. So I'm going to guess probably about, for this solo, I'm going to move it about right here. And it sounds great. The high pitches sound good. They don't sound too muddy or distorted, but they also don't have that weird artifacty noise when you don't save enough data. So I'm going to hit accept, and it's going to switch up the audio. So if I play this, you hear that only this part of the section is shifted down 2 half steps, and that makes it D standard. So let's do the beginning part. Now the beginning part I'm not worried about at all, because all you have to do is hit, if you go to here, hit Alt-T, it's going to save your settings, by the way, so you don't have to worry about shifting it down again and all that stuff. You can just come straight to the order knob. I'm going to stick it about right here, and then it's going to shift this down to D standard. Now that sounds pretty good. So all of this is in D standard right now. So if we come, let's go over to a distorted guitar. Now, something I've also learned is that clean guitar tones are more sensitive to the pitch change than distorted guitar tones. I don't really know why, it's just kind of how it works. So when you're doing clean guitar tones, make sure you're trying to save more data than trying to preserve more audio. Now, when I say preserve more data, that means just keeping the order knob to the left instead of the right, because that's going to save more data and then preserve more audio. Just use your best judgment. You can preview the audio as many times as you want. So you can just move the knob around and preview it until it sounds good to you. Now you don't have to be so precise with it, because you have to remember this guitar track is going to be inside of a mix. So you're not just going to be hearing this, you're going to be hearing the whole mix. So don't worry so much if it sounds funky or weird, it'll be okay. Next up, let's go to the distorted guitar part. Okay, here's our distorted guitar part, right where this thing kind of lands. So I'm just going to click right here, press M, make a marker, boom. Now let's go to the end of this guitar part right here. Now this is where it gets a little, also another complicated part, is you hear it, this last note being played. But then you also hear it in the background fading in, you hear the clean guitar part at the same time that the lead distorted guitar part is leaving. Now in this situation, I want to prioritize preserving the timbre, so I'm just going to cut off that guitar tone right there, and as soon as I hear the clean guitar part coming in that's obviously higher pitched than the distorted guitar part, I want to prioritize that over my low pitch. So rule of thumb is just prioritize your higher pitches over your lower pitches, and that will basically help you the rest of the way. So if we come to this guitar part right here, let me just FN and use my arrows right here, you can see that it's just a distorted guitar. It saved my settings, -2 semitones, -2 semitones. My order knob, I can probably shift this all the way down and just keep it fully timbre preservation, no data preservation, because the pitch is so low that you're not really going to be losing any data anyways. So if I preview this, now that does sound pretty funky, doesn't it? Now it sounds pretty funky in here, but once you move it back into the mix, it'll sound just fine. Remember, you have drums, you have bass, you have vocals, you have all this extra stuff over the track. You're not just listening to the guitar. So just keep that in mind when you're mixing. So you see here this part, this high pitch coming over here. So I'm just gonna wait till it gets. So right here is where it goes low pitch again. So I'm gonna just make another marker, and then I'm gonna go to this markered part right here. And then boom, now we have this part ready to go, ready to be pitched. So if I play it back at the full timbre preservation, no audio data saving, this is what it sounds like. You can hear it, some of those really high pitches, it doesn't even cut through the mix because the data is so lost it can't even save those pitches, and it sounds really funky. So I'm gonna move this order knob pretty far this way. In fact, I'm gonna move it all the way right there. Now you might be thinking, if we're moving from such a timbre preservation over to data preservation audio, it's going to sound funky. But let's listen to this. Listen to the transition between the two. it sounds perfectly fine. And you don't hear any sort of like weirdness happening right at the cut here. It sounds smooth. So if you're shifting, don't worry so much about shifting from far right order knob to a far left order knob. It's going to sound just fine. So I've got those two demonstrated. Let's go over to the solo. Now this is where the really, really high pitches are going to come into play. So you can see if you recognize anything about one, you'll know this is the really slow chuggy. This is the chuggy part where it does like the darkness imprisoning me, you know, that stuff. Now all of this, I would keep all of this just pitched order knob all the way to the right, because the pitch is so low that you don't really need to worry about losing any data. So now let's go over to the solo. I think the solo would happen maybe over here. Oh, sorry. Okay, this is the solo. So let me demonstrate more so. So now, a really complicated part about solos is that solos have different pitches to them. So like this beginning part is really, really high pitched. But if I come over here, this part is way lower pitched than this part over here. Now you're going to need to section that off inside of the solo as well to make it a slightly different knob shift. Maybe you don't have to do it so much so, but if you want your audio to sound precise, you want it to sound natural, this is how I go about it in all of my detuning videos. So we have our really high pitches over here, so I'm going to section this off, and I'm going to section off that lower pitch as well. Now about here is where it sounds a little bit lower from the rest. Now you don't have to worry about getting it exactly on a bar where he's, you know, hitting it right. You can just place it anywhere and just shift it where it sounds right. Just focus, just remember you're focusing on the pitch, not the timing or anything. Just where you want to keep your high pitches preserved over your low pitches, and that's the main thing you're gonna want to focus on. So we have our really high pitch stuff over here. So I'm gonna do my FN. So I'm gonna come all the way over here. Now we have our high-pitched part of the song. Now, this, you should hear a way more stark contrast between the preserved audio and the timbre preserved audio. So if I move this knob all the way to the right, which means it's preserving the timbre over data, this is what it sounds like. You hear that sounds completely it sounds like an alien playing a guitar. It's some weird stuff. So that's the artificial artifacting that I always reference in my videos when I say, oh yeah, you have to preserve the high pitches when they're artifacting. That's what I mean. Because I guess the rule is that the higher pitch the audio, the more you have to preserve the data in order to make it sound good. So I'm going to move this knob basically all the way to the left. Now the low chuggy part is going to sound really muddy, but that high pitch part, the solo that's coming through, that's the main part of the song that everybody's listening to. Not so many people are going to be focusing on that low chuggy part. And honestly, when you're in the mix and you're hearing the drums and the bass and the vocals, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to move this all the way to here. And then if we listen to it now, you notice that it sounds a lot better than that weird artificial stuff from earlier. So now you have to do this for the whole song. Now this is a pretty long song. One is 7 minutes and 26 seconds long. So it'll probably take you your first try once you figure out a process for it and you remember the macros you need to press for all the stuff, it'll take you about an hour per song. Maybe less depending on how short it is. I know there's a lot of short songs out there, so it might be faster or longer depending on the song you're doing and how experienced you are, all of this and that. But this is the main part of the tutorial where this is how you get the one pitch. This is how I did one in C sharp. This is how I did Orion in F sharp. This is how I did all my songs, was using this process right here with Edison. Just as an example, I'm going to move this guitar back into the mix. So all you're going to do is you're going to delete this guitar right here. You're going to take this one and just drag it back in and drag it all the way to the left. And you can see on the audio, it has sectioned off little ticks where you have the pitched audio. So this part is an E, but if I come to this part of the solo, this is what it sounds like in the mix. So you can hear that it sounds pretty good. And this is what this part sounds like in the mix too, the clean part, or I believe this might be the distorted guitar part. So you hear James' vocals and the bass and the drums all right here.
Now hold my breath as I whisper tear. Oh please God, wake me. Now you hear that sounds pretty damn good in the mix.
And I think a big part of that is keeping the drums in their original pitch. It keeps it sounding more natural and like it was recorded that way. So yeah, that is how you form and preserve audio. Now, there is a whole nother process after this where you need to mix the audio as well. You have to mix the vocals and the bass and the drums and the guitar to all sound cohesive. And the best way that I do that personally is I have the original track up at the top and I'll listen to it at the same time as my stems down here, or I'll just kind of play it back and forth, and then I'll try to match the levels of the audio to the original to make it sound good. And you can mix it your own way too. Personally, if I was mixing this, I would raise the bass a lot more because I like the way the bass sounds on this song. And everybody knows, and just for all, Jason Newsted got effed there. So now I'm not going to teach you how to mix. I'm just here to teach you how to preserve the audio. So that is the tutorial, guys. I appreciate you watching. Maybe what I can do is, if you guys have any questions, maybe I'll do a big Discord call with everybody and I'll answer questions about how this stuff works and I'll teach people. We'll see how that goes. So yeah, leave comments down below. Let me know if I missed anything. Let me know if there's any links in the description that I'm missing, because I know that I might miss some because editing this video is going to take for goddamn ever. But yeah, so yeah guys, that is the tutorial on how to preserve your timbre and how to use it in a mix and how to get your stems as well. So yeah, thank you guys for watching.